and thank you for joining me in this video today. First of all, I'm really sorry for not recording much these days. Partially it's because I'm quite focused on some other project at the moment. And partially, in full honesty, I kind of often feel like I'm running out of ideas for new videos. And I really want to avoid kind of repeating myself or simply recycling some old ideas. But again, one is kind of related with another because most of my focus goes to a different direction. But it is just temporary, and hopefully everything should be back on track soon. I hope so. Anyway, I've picked this subject for today's video partially from my own experience, partially from kind of observing other people and society in general, you might say. And it occurred to me that dissociation, although it sounds very seriously, sounds like it is a manifestation of some sort of mental illness, which usually is, and it is quite a serious condition. Many people do struggle with dissociation as a part of, for example, complex PTSD or simply PTSD or some other disorders. Now, I don't want to minimize the importance of it, and I really don't want to offend people who really do struggle from it on a really serious level, to the point where it really impacts their everyday life. But on the other hand, just like with any other mental state or mood or simply mental process, dissociation varies in intensity, and it is probably manifesting itself as being part of the spectrum. So some people will dissociate more, some people will dissociate less. And because of this, the dissociation will manifest itself in these different colors. Now, what occurred to me is that dissociation is actually a really common mechanism. Probably most people dissociate on one point or another without actually realizing that they do dissociate. Well, there are many different causes of dissociation, but the primary one, the root one, basically, is trying to escape from uncomfortable feelings, uncomfortable emotions, or simply some really uncomfortable mental states. So this could be things like anxiety, sadness, anger, maybe happiness, depends on the person. So anything intense, anything that a person doesn't really like to experience or is comfortable with experiences, they will try to dissociate from it. Now, because all of our mental states, they don't occur in a vacuum, if you like. They don't occur unprovoked. There is always a trigger from the outside. So because we are in this constant relationship with the reality and other people, all of our mental states will be triggered by the reality itself. Now, I don't mean that it is someone else's fault that we feel in a particular way, because our mental states, our feelings and emotions are our own responsibility. Obviously, some people outside might, try to annoy us on purpose, for example, or try to provoke us in some way. But essentially, it is our own responsibility to deal with the emotional triggers. So how we react to other people and events. Now, with the dissociation, it is not just the denial of one's feelings or emotions, and perhaps maybe something like minimizing the importance of how we feel or how something made us feel, but it is actual denial of the reality. Now, this might get tricky because each of us will interpret the reality in a slightly different way. So there might be this common reality for all of us. There is gravity, and the light travels in such and speed, and most of us can see the same colors, etc., etc. So there is this common reality. But when it comes to social reality and different social interactions, dynamics, how we interpret other people, how we interpret the behavior of others, how we interpret different events will essentially be kind of individual thing to do and will be very subjective. Obviously, there are many people who will agree on the same thing, but essentially it is all subjective. Now, with the dissociation, it is not just about detaching yourself from your feelings, but it is essentially detaching yourself from the reality. So usually when someone dissociates, they will have certain problems with maintaining focus, giving attention to things. They might kind of minimize the importance of what's happening around them and similar things. Now, all these mechanisms are actually, in fact, about not feeling in a particular way. So because the reality makes us to feel something, we don't want that reality. So a person will dissociate. So they'll try to distract themselves, and that can be done, I don't know, by watching TV, playing games, or staring at the wall and not doing anything. It is all entirely up to the person. Now, when we actually look at the majority of people, we can see these behaviors as a norm, as something that everyone does to, for example, unwind, relax, reduce their stress, and so on and on. And generally, to kind of space out for some time and not think about the reality and problems and all these things that make us stressed. Take, for example, people who enjoy partying a lot. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with partying and alcohol and having some fun, but the mechanism behind what prompts people to do it, okay, on the one side it's having fun, but on another side, why do you need to have fun? Why do you need to do something different than the regular kind of life, than, regular activities of everyday life? Okay, you want to have fun. So when you look at people, for example, in a club, they will not be thinking about everyday problems, and they will simply try to have a nice time in that particular moment within this particular setting. Now, I can't help but see it as a dissociation, because you distract yourself from the reality in order to gain a particular mental state, which is different to your everyday mental state, if that makes sense. So this suggests that dissociation is essentially a perceptual process, meaning that you kind of modify your attention, you modify your focus, so that you shift your attention from particular things that you find distressing into things that are kind of pleasant or somehow numbing or distracting, so that you don't have to think about the stresses of everyday life. So, in essence, this process of dissociation is kind of about changing the quality of your relationship with the reality around you. Now, you can't sever the relationship entirely, because, even breathing is still putting you in that relationship with everything. You are still in contact with the world around you. So we can't help it. We're constantly in this relationship with other people, with events, whatever our senses can pick up. This is all manifesting this ongoing relationship. And the dissociation is an attempt either to change it so that you can kind of modify what sort of sensory information you want to pick up, what sort of events you want to be in, or simply if you want to narrow your focus into a particular activity. This is all still dissociation, because you switch your focus and you kind of tune out from the environment in order to do a particular thing. Or simply a dissociation might be an attempt to sever this relationship completely by trying to shut your senses down, by trying to avoid thinking about what you should be doing, avoid thinking about the problems that you might be having. And this could be to some extent achieved by, for example, sleeping. This is probably like the highest level of dissociation we can all do. Or by doing certain activities that will numb your mental or cognitive processes. For example, when you watch TV, you don't have to think. You just sit there, you watch. And some people can focus so badly on just watching the TV that they will not hear very easily what's going on around them. It's a very interesting process. And if you ask them, they will probably not be aware that they are dissociating. So I think it is quite important that people at least consider the possibility that they dissociate, whether they do it consciously or unconsciously, because in a way it is something that can prevent us from living the life to the fullest. And I don't mean to the fullest by doing so many amazing things that, you can't find time on your schedule to engage in another activity. But it's more about kind of sinking in or embodying yourself in the reality, so that perhaps the line between yourself and the reality becomes a little bit blurry, so that in a way you're not trying to resist the reality or try to control it, control other people, and not be satisfied because other people make you feel in a particular way, which is so awful. But instead kind of go with the flow and accept what's happening. And at the same time, being able to tolerate the stress, being able to tolerate all these different emotions that might arise as a response to different events. And this is all part of being human. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to go along with every emotion. It doesn't mean that you have to react to your emotions. But simply staying with them and accepting them should be kind of enough to avoid dissociating on the first place. On the other hand, perhaps dissociating is something like evolutionary mechanism. I mean, if everyone does it, of course, to different extents, then it must be something that perhaps gives people at least a short break from the reality. I mean, we all get tired, we all get overwhelmed, and that's why people seek all these distractions on the first place. But again, it doesn't mean that one has to be a slave to the state. Or in other words, that we dissociate and we don't know that we dissociate. So we just go with the flow. This is probably the worst case scenario, because in such a case, you cannot really take any control of yourself or your life. And you are kind of half sleeping because when you dissociate, your mind shuts down and you won't be able to engage in life to the same extent if you didn't dissociate in the first place. So this is my take on dissociation. There's probably much more to say than this. I'm not a big fan of clinical psychology or psychiatry, which tries to, box the human experience, the regular human experience, into a label of something extremely malignant or something that should be fought. So anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.